morning, good afternoon, good night, good weekend, babes.
Daves, we are so glad to have you here with us tonight.
We really are. And honestly, before we even get into the absolute just psychological disaster class of this television episode.
Which is a lot. It is a lot to process this week.
It is so much. But I need everyone, all of you in the Snark squad, to just set the scene with me for a second. Because it is Thursday evening. The sun is, just starting to think about setting. The Palomas are officially on deck. And babes, I have to say, these drinks are amazing.
They're objectively fantastic.
Right. Like, I am just fully, deeply emotionally attached to the Paloma aesthetic right now. The pink grapefruit, the Tajin rim, the condensation dripping down the glass. Like, why do we not integrate this into our daily routine more often?
Because we have jobs.
Well, yeah, but there is this specific, undeniable summer cocktail energy that happens the second you combine, like, premium tequila with fresh citrus. You take one sip and instantly your internal temperature rises in the best way possible. It just gives effortless summer baddie vibes.
Effortless summer baddie vibes.
Yes. I am psychologically sitting on a white sand beach in Tulum right now, even though my physical reality is, my sofa.
Base, your physical reality includes oversized fleece sweatpants. But I will concede the point on the beverage. The flavor profile of a well-crafted Paloma is it's objectively superior to almost any other warm weather drink.
Here we go.
No, I mean it. It is the interplay of the agave's earthy undertones colliding with that sharp, acidic bite of the fresh grapefruit, all of it anchored by just a hint of salinity from the rim. It creates a complex, multifaceted sensory experience that frankly demands culinary respect. We aren't just drinking. We're engaging in an orchestrated vacation for the palate.
Oh my gosh, stop it. Listen to you acting like a pretentious cocktail influencer for literally no reason. An orchestrated vacation for the palate? You just like it because the tequila to mixer ratio is dangerously high.
I will not apologize for appreciating mixology.
You are unhinged. But honestly, we desperately need this simulated vacation energy right now. We need the psychological armor of the Paloma because, well, I have to break the truly devastating news to the Snark squad.
It's bad news, babes.
It's so bad. The dreaded camping trip, the one we have been manifesting a cancellation for like 3 months, it is officially happening this weekend, and we are absolutely not excited.
Dreading it is the understatement of the century. I am in a state of preemptive mourning. Like, I am actively grieving the impending loss of my indoor plumbing, my high-speed internet, and my precisely calibrated air conditioning.
It's going to be pure chaos. For those of you in the Snark squad who haven't heard the full lineup yet, brace yourselves.
Okay.
It is the two of us, our deeply complex and slightly narcissistic mothers.
Highly narcissistic mothers. Let's be accurate.
Okay, highly narcissistic mothers. Our siblings, Allison and 2 other friends who clearly do not understand what they signed up for. Like, it sounds like an archaic form of punishment. What kind of karmic debt are we paying off that requires forced family bonding in the actual wilderness?
None. We did nothing to deserve this.
But, okay, I am actively trying to stay optimistic. I really am. Let's focus on the aesthetic. We can romanticize the fire pit, right? We can conceptualize the s'mores, the oversized cozy sweaters, the acoustic guitar.
I'm going to stop you right there. I'm already mentally drafting architectural escape plans. There is no romanticizing this. Adult camping is an elaborate scam perpetuated by the outdoor recreation industry to sell you structurally unnecessary $300 insulated coolers.
Wait, I love a good cooler, though.
That's how they get you. The entire concept of sharing a wooden cabin, or, God forbid, a canvas tent with our extended families is a recipe for a psychological breakdown. I don't even enjoy sharing a spacious elevator with most people.
I mean, true.
Now, add in the variables, relentless bugs, a complete eradication of personal privacy, and the sheer volume of passive-aggressive family dynamics that are going to erupt the exact second someone fails to ignite the portable camp stove. It is a social experiment designed to fail.
You know someone is absolutely starting a screaming match around that fire pit. I am putting a timer on it. I give it until exactly 9:45 p.m. on Friday night before the first tear is shed over a misunderstood comment from, 2014.
Oh, without question. Our mothers alone are going to weaponize the marshmallow roasting sticks.
Literally. This trip possesses the exact chemical makeup of a future true crime documentary. I can already hear the ominous voiceover, they went into the woods as a family looking to reconnect, but only the raccoons know the truth of what happened in cabin 4.
Honestly, if I get dragged into the woods and taken out by a rogue bear, the silver lining is that I will not have to endure Allison complaining about how the humidity is affecting her hair cuticle.
Oh my God, Allison's hair. She's going to bring a generator just for her Dyson Airwrap.
Which perfectly segues into a very pressing sociological debate we have been having all week behind the scenes. Snark Squad, we need your ruling on this. Are we actually ingrained homebodies, or are we finally entering our outside era?
See, I am officially claiming this week as the grand opening of our outside era. We are transforming into fun summer people. We are holding palomas. We are embarking on a wilderness excursion. We are experiencing the world.
Let the official record show that I am a militant, unapologetic homebody, and I refuse to be shamed for it.
You are so stubborn.
I just know myself. There is nothing more centering, more restorative to the human nervous system than a securely locked door and a night spent inside. The outside world operates on a deficit model. It actively drains your energy reserves. Like, does adulthood naturally calcify people into homebodies? Or have we just reached a point of cognitive clarity where we realize that putting on restrictive clothing to sit on a rigid stool at a deafeningly loud bar yields a terrible return on investment?
See, you are looking at this like an accountant calculating social ROI. Look at the humanity.
Humanity is exhausted.
But it does make me wonder, like, what are the actual parameters of being outside? Does patio dining at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday count as participating in the outside era? Because I went to literally one modestly sized social gathering last Thursday, and the ensuing social hangover required 3 to 5 business days of recovery. I need a REM cycle nap, just contemplating the mechanics of making small talk with a stranger about the weather.
Exactly. You are proving my point. The social battery of the modern adult is not equipped for sustained exposure, which is why depositing us into a forest is catastrophic. It is the outside era, but compounded by manual labor.
Okay, fair. But before we fully hyperventilate about the efficacy of de-mosquito repellent, we owe the Snark Squad an update on our other grand experiment.
Ah, yes. The great dietary shift.
Yes. Babes, we officially made it to day 5 of Vegetarian Week.
A minor miracle.
We did. And I am not going to lie, the cellular turnover is real. Our skin looks incredible. I am radiating a deeply hydrated glow.
To be fair, you claim your skin is glowing every time you drink an extra glass of water.
Yeah.
You honestly believe you are naturally moisturized by the universe.
Because I am.
But I will evaluate the data fairly. There are quantifiable physiological shifts. I feel physically unburdened. The digestive process is operating with terrifying efficiency. But mentally, in my soul, I am mourning the existence of a perfectly seared double cheeseburger with a level of profound longing that I usually reserve for canceled social obligations.
I completely validate that. I had a vivid cinematic dream about a bacon, egg, and cheese on a toasted bagel last night.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
I woke up genuinely devastated, but at the same time, I'm developing this strange, unearned sense of superiority. Like we are accidentally slipping into the wellness influencer pipeline. I went to the artisanal grocery store yesterday, and I purposefully purchased 2 bundles of lacinato kale, and I felt smug about it. Who have I become?
A monster of your own making. At this exact trajectory, we are one cold-pressed celery juice away from becoming completely insufferable.
It's true.
If I ever start casually referencing the diversity of my gut microbiome in casual conversation, I need you to initiate a tactical extraction.
I promise I will intervene. I will pull you out. But you know, as we sit here dissecting the anxiety of family camping trips and the psychological toll of kale, it really provides a necessary perspective.
How so?
Because our messy, complaining lives look perfectly sane compared to the absolute masterclass in self-destruction happening in your friends and neighbors this week. Snark Squad, Season 2, Episode 8 is a disaster.
It is a structural collapse.
Like, I Feel Lost Without Me is an episode so dense with terrible choices that it requires an immediate surgical unpacking.
The word messy doesn't even begin to cover it. Shall we examine Mel's ongoing campaign of suburban warfare? Because the legal gymnastics and cognitive dissonance occurring in Westmont right now belong in a sociology textbook.
We absolutely must. Let's set the board. We open the episode with a massive looming storm cloud Tories DUI hearing, and the writers hit us with this brilliantly thick, suffocating irony right out of the gate.
Oh, it's delicious.
Kat Resnick, the family's defense attorney, explicitly bans Mel Tory's own mother from stepping foot inside the courthouse for her daughter's hearing.
It's incredible.
Mel's ongoing vindictive blood feud with the neighbors has escalated to such a volatile degree that she is now a walking legal liability. Kat essentially looks Mel in the eye and says, "Your mere presence in front of a judge will actively tank your child's future. Please remain on your sofa."
Before we analyze the parenting failure, we need to take a moment to respect the sheer capitalist genius of Kat Resnick. The rising trajectory of her billable hours is astounding. The Cooper family is acting as a private equity firm for Kat's retirement portfolio.
She must be making millions off them.
She points it out to them. They are the most lucrative clients she possesses, purely by virtue of being the most reckless people in the tri-state area.
Honestly, I was actually holding back tears for Tori in this scene. Like, let's look at the reality of a DUI. Tori made a catastrophic mistake. She endangered lives, she got arrested, her college acceptances are in jeopardy, her entire trajectory is derailed. But imagine standing in that sterile courtroom, facing the absolute terrifying authority of a judge, and the woman who is supposed to be your anchor, your mother, cannot even be in the building because she is currently embroiled in a pettier yet legally worse criminal situation than you are. Is deeply tragic.
It is a profound failure of guardianship.
But my sympathy evaporates the second the camera cuts back to Mel, because Mel is behaving like and I am quoting a brilliant member of the Snark squad on Reddit here, a menopausal toddler.
A menopausal toddler is the most clinically precise diagnostic term for Mel's behavior this entire season. Let's look at the mechanics of the situation here. Kat provides Mel with the ultimate legal off-ramp. A simple, frictionless solution to neutralize the neighbor crisis.
All she had to do was apologize.
Exactly. All Mel has to do is walk across the property line, look Brienne and Clay in the eye, apologize for intentionally knocking over the construction porta potty onto their driveway, and cut a check for the damages. That is it. A standard transactional apology. But Mel's ego operates like a hot air balloon with a tear in the fabric. She thinks conceding to Brienne is a surrender of her social status.
It takes Coop, the man who makes terrible decisions for a living, to deliver the fatal blow. He literally says, Mel, you have no status left.
A sniper shot.
That line made me gasp. So Mel finally breaks. She forces herself to march over to their immaculate, construction-dusted house, and she delivers this incredibly strained, jaw-clenched apology. And Clay, who clearly just wants peace, is completely ready to accept it. But then Brienne steps into the fray.
Brienne does not let things go.
No. And this is where the concept of boundary setting crosses over into weaponized control. Brienne looks Mel up and down and says they will accept the apology, but on one condition. Mel has to enroll in and complete an anger management program to prove she can be a safe neighbor.
You could literally see the synapses in Mel's brain short-circuiting. The concept of mandated psychological intervention is insulting to her. She views therapy not as a tool for emotional regulation, but as the punishment for the lower classes, which is an astonishingly rich perspective considering she commits a felony about 60 minutes later.
Exactly. Because the illusion of the truce shatters almost immediately. Later that evening, it is pouring rain. Mel is driving, and Kat calls her in a panic. Kat drops a tactical nuke on the situation.
A total game changer.
Brienne and Clay didn't just accept the apology, they went digging. And they unearthed the cell phone video from last year, the video of Mel physically assaulting Sam. So now Brienne and Clay are bypassing the apology entirely. They are filing for a formal restraining order, and they are petitioning the state board to have Mel's therapist license permanently revoked.
They executed a flawless, scorched earth strategy. And how does Mel, a licensed mental health professional, process this sudden existential threat to her career and freedom? She handles it with the emotional regulation of a feral cat.
She loses her mind. She is absolutely raging inside her car. The windshield wipers are going. She is screaming. She's sobbing. She turns aggressively onto her street, and what does she see?
The truck.
The neighbor's contractor truck is illegally parked, partially blocking the road again. This is the trigger. Instead of slowing down, she hits the accelerator. She speeds into her own driveway like a stunt driver, and then bump.
The sickening thud.
The sickening thud. She throws the car in park, steps out into the rain, and realizes she has accidentally run over and killed Arlo, Brienne and Clay's dog.
The cardinal rule of television writing, broken in an instant. You can murder a human character, you can burn down a city, but you never, under any circumstances, kill the dog.
I was pacing the room. I had my hands clamped over my mouth. The sheer, unadulterated horror of that realization. If you kill a dog on a television screen, you cross a line of no return with the audience. But setting the emotional devastation aside, it morphed instantly into this chaotic, Coen Brothers-style slapstick nightmare.
I will not set the logistics aside, because the Snark Squad on Reddit is currently organizing a revolt over the physics of this scene, and their architectural analysis is flawless. We have to address the massive structural plot hole.
Okay, Mr. Logistics, break it down for me, because I was too busy mourning an imaginary golden retriever to notice the blueprint errors.
Let's trace the narrative arc of the season. What has been the primary physical manifestation of the feud? The wall. Brienne and Clay spent the last 6 episodes constructing a monolithic, impenetrable stone wall along the property line.
Right, the ugly stone wall.
A wall explicitly commissioned to keep Arlo the dog out of Mel's yard. That structure has been the subject of multiple town hall meetings. So I ask you, based on the laws of physics, how exactly did Arlo end up in Mel's driveway during a rainstorm? Did the dog develop opposable thumbs to unlatch the gate? Did he pole vault over the masonry?
I mean, dogs dig under things.
Through a concrete foundation. The geography of the scene is an insult to the viewer's memory. Furthermore, when Mel scooped up the deceased animal, the prop department should be investigated. It possessed the rigidity of a taxidermy display from a defunct natural history museum.
Okay, I will give you the prop argument. It was giving very distinct Carnival Claw machine prize energy. It looked like it was stuffed with foam peanuts, but you are ignoring the suffocating psychological weight of the moment.
Am I?
Yes. She is kneeling in the mud, cradling this rigid prop dog, knowing that Brienne and Clay already view her as a suburban terrorist who drops dog feces on their porch. If they discover she committed vehicular pet manslaughter, they won't just take her license. They will ensure she is incarcerated. And just as she is spiraling into hyperventilation, headlights cut through the rain. Sam pulls up.
Sam. A character whose timing is either orchestrated by divine intervention or a deeply calculated surveillance operation.
Sam steps out of the car, takes in the horrific tableau of Mel sobbing in the mud with a deceased pet, and her reaction is wild. Like a normal human brain processes that image and says, oh my God, we need to call the police, or we need to go knock on the neighbor's door immediately.
Of course.
Sam bypasses logic entirely. Her first instinct, without a second of hesitation, is, we have to bury the evidence.
And so begins the farce. They drag the carcass to the backyard and begin excavating a grave next to the swimming pool. But because the universe demands consequence, they strike a subterranean sprinkler line with the shovel.
It was so loud.
The pipe bursts, the grave begins to flood, which means the structural integrity of the soil is compromised, creating a swamp. It is a Chekhov's gun situation. You don't introduce a flooded, shallow grave in episode 8 unless someone is going to trip over a decaying paw in episode 10.
But wait. Let's pause right here, because a member of the Snark squad posited a theory on the subreddit that completely rewired my brain, and I need your analytical take on it. The user asked, why didn't Sam just take the fall for the dog?
Walk me through the psychological calculus of that theory.
Think about the history. Last season, Sam meticulously framed Coop for a crime he didn't commit. Since then, the radioactive tension between Mel and Sam has been the elephant in the room. They are friends, but it's fractured. Imagine if Sam had looked at Mel in the driveway, grabbed her by the shoulders, and said, Mel, you are facing a restraining order. You are losing your license. Go inside. I will hold the dog. I will walk to Brienne's front door, and I will tell them I lost control of my car in the rain.
Oh, wow.
Right. It would have been the ultimate sacrificial lamb moment. It would have instantly absolved the guilt from season 1 and bonded Mel to her permanently.
That is an exceptionally astute narrative correction. It highlights the difference between reactive writing and character-driven writing. The writers opted for the cheap physical comedy of a muddy shovel and a broken pipe, completely ignoring the opportunity for a profound, manipulative masterstroke by Sam.
It would have been brilliant.
Taking the blame for Arlo would have given Sam total psychological leverage over Mel for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
She would own her.
Exactly. A massive missed opportunity. But I will say, despite the narrative fumble, the scene that immediately follows is stunning. They give up on the digging. They are sitting on the edge of the pool, completely drenched, covered in mud and moral failure, and they share this incredibly raw, lived-in conversation. Mel strips away the ego for 1 minute and admits she feels lost without me.
Yeah, that was heavy.
It encapsulates that terrifying, unmooring reality of a middle-aged identity crisis, where you realize you don't recognize the person you've become.
It was a fleeting oasis of genuine emotional vulnerability in a desert of pathological liars. But speaking of pathological liars suffering from an identity crisis, how gracefully can we transition to the sheer, unadulterated delusion of Coop?
Oh, we are sprinting toward Coop, because if Mel is avoiding accountability, Coop is actively writing the syllabus for a masterclass in catastrophic hypocrisy.
Let us trace the architecture of Coop's moral compass today. It is morning. He is physically driving Tori to the courthouse for the DUI hearing. He looks over at his teenage daughter, who is trembling at the precipice of a criminal record. He experiences a sudden, blinding flash of self-awareness.
Barely.
Barely, yes. He realizes that the parental foundation he and Mel have provided is built on a swamp of criminality and selfishness. In that vehicle, he makes a solemn internal vow. He decides he must evolve. He must start modeling integrity. He must, to use his words, do the right thing.
It is so painfully endearing when Coop's conscience boots up for 5 minutes. It's like watching a toddler discover object permanence.
I would allow the word endearing if his execution wasn't a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. Let's look at what Coop's brain categorizes as doing the right thing. Within hours of this grand moral epiphany, on the exact same solar rotation as his daughter's court appearance, what is his first actionable step toward righteousness?
He puts on a tactical turtleneck and breaks into his best friend Gordy's house to steal a $300,000 vintage baseball card.
Precisely. He attempts to cure a moral deficit with a felony burglary. The mental gymnastics required to compartmentalize a lecture on civic duty in the morning while jimmying a window lock in the afternoon is staggering. And what makes it worse is that it is the most incompetent heist ever committed to film.
Because he relied on Elena for reconnaissance, Elena assures him that Gordy and Lisa are attending a high society fashion show in the city. The house is supposed to be empty for hours, so Coop is creeping through the living room, but suddenly the front door flies open.
A total disaster.
Gordy and Lisa have returned prematurely, and they are not just home, they are engaged in a vicious, venomous, high-decibel marital screaming match.
Leaving our phantom thief trapped in the center of the house. So what tactical maneuver does Coop execute? He retreats to the primary bathroom.
Oh.
And this is the precise moment the episode completely detaches from the gravitational pull of reality.
It gets so weird.
Coop is physically sitting in the dry bathtub, listening to his friends hurl verbal acid at each other, and he begins to evaluate his escape routes. He looks at the bathroom window and internally monologues, "My knees are too degraded to survive a drop from the second story."
Let me interject here, because a structural engineer on Reddit pulled up the exterior shots of Gordy's house.
I love Reddit.
That specific bathroom window is positioned directly above the deep end of the backyard swimming pool. He could have executed a simple water landing.
But he rejects the window. Instead of jumping, he cracks under the pressure. The stress fractures his psyche, and he begins hallucinating. The ghost of his deceased father, Ron, suddenly materializes next to the sink.
Bizarre.
And Coop proceeds to have a full-blown, deeply earnest psychotherapy session with an apparition. Are we suddenly pivoting genres? Are we doing supernatural interventions now?
The show seems to be testing the waters of magical realism and failing spectacularly. But listen, I don't even think we are meant to believe Ron is a literal poltergeist. I think the human brain is just a fragile machine. Coop is experiencing a midlife nervous breakdown because the reality of his biological aging is colliding with his James Bond fantasy. He is realizing he isn't an elite cat burglar. He is a tired, middle-aged father sitting in a porcelain tub, stealing a piece of cardboard from a man who trusts him. Ron is just his own pathetic, buried conscience manifesting a familiar face to cope with the shame.
That is a very generous psychological reading of the text. However, whatever phantom therapy Ron provided must have included a cloaking device, because his eventual method of escape relies on the most infuriating, insulting application of plot armor I have witnessed in modern television.
He literally just walks out the front door.
He opens the bathroom door, strides down the central hallway, physically bisects the living room where Gordy and Lisa are standing, and casually exits through the front portal. And they do not perceive him.
Because they were consumed by their argument. Have you never had tunnel vision during a fight?
I refuse to accept this defense. Listen to me very carefully. The human eye is biologically evolved to detect motion in the periphery to avoid predators. I do not care if you are screaming at your spouse with the intensity of 1,000 suns about the division of household labor. If a 6'2" adult male dressed in dark clothing casually strolls through your line of sight, your optical nerve registers the anomaly.
It's television.
You do not achieve temporary invisibility just because a married couple is bickering. It defied the laws of biology. It was an insult to the viewer's intelligence.
It was pure, unadulterated comedy. The sheer audacity of the staging had me crying laughing, but realistically, it transitions perfectly into the overarching theme of the episode. Coop's delusion that he is a phantom is perfectly mirrored by the terrifying reality-bending delusion of the finance bros operating in this universe. The men hovering around Sam and Grace have completely lost the plot.
The term finance bro implies a level of harmless Patagonia vest-wearing annoyance. Owen Ash is a walking, breathing geopolitical threat.
He truly is. Let's break down the home invasion. Sam returns to her house, her sanctuary, the one place she controls, and she discovers that Ash hasn't just dropped by for a visit. He has executed a hostile takeover of her domestic space.
A military occupation of her kitchen.
He has imported a team of private sushi chefs who are dismantling her kitchen. He has purchased obscenely expensive, oversized toys for her children to instantly buy their loyalty. But the detail that made my blood run cold: he deliberately sidelined Esperanza, Sam's domestic helper.
That was a tactical strike.
He literally pushed the woman who keeps Sam's life functioning out of her own workspace to orchestrate this performance. It wasn't a gift. It was an eviction.
You are identifying the exact mechanics of tactical love bombing, weaponized with infinite capital.
I physically recoiled from the television. I was shouting at the screen. But we have to give a standing ovation to Sam's reaction. In 90% of television shows, the female protagonist would melt into a puddle over a billionaire's grand sweeping gesture. They would frame it as romance. But Sam's internal alarm bells went off immediately.
Because she isn't an idiot.
You're right. She saw the strings attached to the sushi. She firmly tells him she needs space. And Ash, revealing his true face, hits her with the most toxic, manipulative, deeply sexist line imaginable. He says most women would appreciate this.
And Sam's parry is lethal. She doesn't flinch. She looks at him and says, "Go find those women and give them the food your cooks made before it rots." It is a phenomenal assertion of boundaries.
I cheered. He is so deeply entrenched in his misogyny that he expects her to trade her autonomy for a spicy tuna roll.
We need to strip away the romance and look at the clinical psychology of what Ash is executing. This is not courtship. He is not trying to bring joy to Sam's evening. He is fundamentally rearranging the air in her home. By sidelining Esperanza, he is testing his ability to sever Sam's support system.
Exactly, it's isolation.
He is invading her sanctuary to demonstrate that his wealth can override her authority in every aspect of her existence, down to the caloric intake of her children and the employment of her staff. It is a calculated assertion of dominance, wrapped in the deceptive packaging of a luxury gift.
It is bone-chilling. And the terrifying part is, Coop finally wakes up to how dangerous Ash actually is. Coop tries to activate his Boy Scout persona again. Under the cover of night, he orchestrates a clandestine meeting with Liv, the executive at the Bailey firm. He brings her the radioactive intel. He says, "Liv, Ash is flagged on the OFAC list. He is actively laundering dark money through the firm's Excelsior account. We have an ethical and legal obligation to tip off the compliance department."
And Liv, functioning as the singular voice of reason in this entire fictional universe, delivers the most necessary, ice-cold reality check of the season.
She doesn't just shut him down, she dismantles his worldview. She explains the math to him. She says, if we blow the whistle on this, Bailey the corporation and Onash the billionaire will survive. They possess fleets of defense attorneys and bottomless resources. But Coop and Liv, the mid-level cogs, they will be the scapegoats fed to the federal prosecutors. Is Liv literally the only character who understands the mechanics of the real world?
Yes. Liv is entirely immune to the Cooper family delusion virus. Let's explain what OFAC actually means for the Snark Squad, because the show tosses the acronym around without context.
Right, too.
OFAC is the Office of Foreign Assets Control. If a name hits that list, it means the U.S. Treasury Department suspects them of terrorism, international narcotics trafficking, or weapons proliferation. It is the ultimate red flag. Liv understands the corporate ecosystem. When you discover your firm is washing money for an entity on that list, you do not play the hero. You do not bite the hand that feeds the tiger unless you want to lose your entire arm. The compliance department isn't there to protect the law. It's there to protect the firm. Liv's self-preservation is the only logical response.
But speaking of people who lack the self-preservation instinct of a lemming, we have to talk about Barney.
Barney's ego, a structure so fragile it could be shattered by a stiff breeze.
Barney, deciding to play amateur sleuth, runs a background check on Ash's corporate history. And he discovers something far worse than money laundering. He uncovers a pattern. Ash has had 3 former business partners who have essentially disappeared. They evaporated. They no longer exist in the physical realm.
So Coop, experiencing a rare moment of genuine altruism, attempts to insulate his friend. He tries to forcefully fire Barney from the gym real estate deal to pull him out of the blast radius. And Grace, Barney's heavily pregnant wife, is pleading with him. She recognizes the existential threat. She begs him, please, just walk away. Go accept the job at my father's company. It's safe. It's boring. We need you alive.
And Barney looks at his pregnant wife, looks at the evidence of a serial killer, and refuses. He rejects a life raft because he claims his sovereignty as a man is at stake.
I need to pause and emphasize the depths of my contempt for Barney in this sequence. I want to aggressively roast his entire psychological profile.
Let him have it.
Let us examine the data he is working with. He's choosing the statistically probable outcome of literal, violent death at the hands of an international arms dealer over the mild suburban embarrassment of accepting a paycheck from his father-in-law. Let the sheer absurdity of that calculation wash over you. His masculine pride is so wildly inflated, yet so structurally compromised, that he would rather risk leaving his wife a single mother and his child an orphan than admit he requires a safe harbor. Sovereignty as a man. You are a glorified spreadsheet manager, Barney. Swallow your pride. Go sit in a beige cubicle at your father-in-law's logistics firm and remain breathing.
It is the ultimate toxic manifestation of the patriarchy. He would rather die a sovereign man than live as a subordinate. It's madness. Every single male character in this episode is trapped in a prison constructed by their own massive egos and catastrophic decisions. But amid all this suffocating delusion, there is one character who finally attempts to shatter the glass and break free. And that brings us to the emotional core of the episode, Ali.
Ah, yes. Ollie's great escape from the Cooper compound.
The pressure finally shatters her. Ollie is standing at the chalkboard, staring at her students, attempting to deliver a lesson, and she just hits the wall. You can see the light go out in her eyes. She walks out of the classroom in the middle of a sentence. She marches to the bank, withdraws the modest inheritance left from Ron's passing, signs a lease on a cramped, independent apartment, and begins throwing her belongings into duffel bags to vacate Coop's house. I was openly weeping during this montage.
You weep at everything.
I found her messy, impulsive exit so deeply relatable and profoundly empowering. Sometimes the only way to survive a toxic environment is to physically sever the cord without looking back.
Okay, I will validate your emotional response to her pursuit of autonomy.
Yeah.
But analytically, let's take the emotion out of it and look at the spreadsheet. I have to point out the absolute catastrophic financial delusion of her strategy.
Why are you being so cynical? She has seed money. She has the inheritance.
She abandoned a salaried position with benefits in this current macroeconomic climate to live off a modest inheritance. Do you have any concept of what a modest inheritance affords you in a major metropolitan housing market? It covers first month's rent, last month's rent, an exorbitant security deposit, broker fees, and perhaps enough surplus capital to purchase a week's worth of generic groceries. You do not dramatically sever your sole stream of income with zero contingency plan just to prove a psychological point to your older brother. It is a recipe for eviction in 90 days.
You are looking at this purely through the lens of a financial auditor. You have to factor in the emotional tax of staying. The psychological cost of remaining in Coop's chaotic radioactive orbit was vastly higher than the financial risk of signing a lease. Sometimes you have to jump out of the airplane and trust that you can sew the parachute together before you hit the ground.
That is terrible advice.
But even if the logistics are flawed, Coop's reaction to her packing was unforgivable. He stands in the doorway and hits her with the most patronizing, condescending line imaginable. He says, "Someone gave you a lease."
It was a surgical strike designed to assassinate her self-esteem.
He is a suffocating, parasitic brother. He masks his control as protection. He doesn't actually want to keep her safe. He wants to keep her small. He needs Ollie living in the basement because as long as she is the designated mess of the family, Coop doesn't have to look in the mirror and acknowledge that his life is in ruins. If Ollie achieves stability, Coop becomes the undeniable failure.
That is a highly accurate assessment of narcissistic family roles. Ollie functions as his emotional grounding wire. She absorbs the family dysfunction so he can maintain the illusion of control. When she unplugs from the system, he is completely untethered. But his attempt to belittle her fails. She zips the bag, gets into her Uber, and physically removes herself from the narrative.
Which leaves Coop standing alone on the sidewalk, and then the final 60 seconds. The cliffhanger that set the internet on fire.
The ultimate non-consensual entry into the outside era.
Coop turns his back to the street and begins walking up his driveway. The camera pans. A deeply suspicious, unmarked utility van rolls to a silent stop. The doors slide open. Men in tactical masks swarm out. They deploy a taser into Coop's spine. He collapses onto the concrete, paralyzed. They drag his dead weight into the cavernous back of the van, slam the doors, and speed off into the night. Cut to black. Roll credits.
The Snark squad on Reddit is treating this like the Zapruder film. The conspiracy theories are multiplying by the hour. Let's lay the suspects out on the table and litigate the evidence. Who financed the abduction of Coop?
Okay, suspect number one and the most obvious candidate, Owen Ash. This feels like the most statistically probable answer, right? Look at the timeline. Barney just uncovered the digital paper trail, proving Ash disappears his dissenting partners. Coop has been actively dragging his feet on signing the critical 5% real estate deal. Ash operates entirely on dominance. A kidnapping is just a very aggressive calendar invite.
Ash is the most logical entity. He operates with total impunity, he commands the physical resources to execute a clean snatch and grab, and he is clearly reaching the end of his tolerance for Coop's moral wavering. Furthermore, if the compliance department at Bailey even sneezed in Ash's direction and word got back to him that Coop visited Liv in the middle of the night, that van is not taking him to a negotiation, it is taking him to a landfill.
Okay, suspect number 2, Felix, the neighborhood narcotics distributor. Let's look at his motive. Earlier in the episode, Felix corners Elena in a deeply threatening manner. He demands the return of a $65,000 by the end of the week, and he explicitly threatens her physical safety. Could Felix have hired a tail on Elena, realized her connection to Coop, and orchestrated the kidnapping to use Coop as a high-value hostage to squeeze the capital out of her?
It is a plausible theory, but it ignores the operational style of the perpetrators. Felix's business model is distinctly street-level intimidation. He breaks into your kitchen and menaces you over coffee. Coordinated, military-style taser strikes utilizing unmarked vans feel distinctly above his operational budget.
That is a fair point regarding the budget. Okay, let's pivot to suspect number 3, my personal favorite theory, Gordy. Think about it. What if Gordy isn't the oblivious, cuckolded friend we think he is? What if his house is wired with hidden nanny cams? He reviews the footage after his fight with Lisa, sees his supposed best friend hiding in the bathtub and stealing his prized $300,000 baseball card, and decides to bypass the police and hire private muscle to retrieve his property.
I would genuinely applaud the writers if they executed that twist. Gordy dropping the facade of the harmless suburbanite to reveal a ruthless, vengeful vigilante. That is character development.
And then we have the extreme wild card, suspect number 4, Christian from season 1. What if the art syndicate is back to force Coop out of retirement?
That requires entirely too much narrative backpedaling. However, amidst all these theories, we must address the glaring, cynical elephant in the room. Both of us, and the prevailing consensus of the Reddit community, agree on one fundamental truth. This cliffhanger was a cheap, manipulative parlor trick.
I hate how right you are. Someone on the subreddit formulated it perfectly. They wrote, "The show has 7 disparate storylines aimlessly treading water and relies entirely on unearned cliffhangers to simulate momentum," and I violently agree with that assessment.
It is the ultimate crutch of the weekly release television format. The writers lack the structural discipline to pace a narrative arc over a full hour. So they allow the characters to engage in circular dialogue for 55 minutes, and then they throw a protagonist into the back of a cargo van in the final 60 seconds to artificially mandate your viewership for the following week. It is narrative extortion.
It is. But the tragedy is that the extortion works flawlessly on me. I will absolutely be seated next Thursday. Because my life is mundane, I am messy, and I require the drama to survive. Which serves as the perfect transition into our weekly segments. Let's pivot from the fictional trauma on screen to the impending, very real trauma of our lives. Segment 1. Who would ruin the camping trip first?
The parameters are established. We take the characters from your friends and neighbors, surgically extract them from their wealthy suburb, force them onto our impending, dreaded weekend camping trip alongside our narcissistic mothers, and we debate who triggers the first emotional collapse.
I am coming out of the gate swinging. The answer is Coop. Coop destroys the ecosystem of the campsite first.
Present your evidence to the jury.
Look at Coop's psychological profile. He is a man deeply, fundamentally insecure about his masculinity and his ability to serve as a provider. He would arrive at the campsite, unpack the vehicle, and realize he completely forgot to pack the structural poles for the tent. But instead of admitting fault and asking for help, his ego would take over. He would wait until 2 a.m., sneak over to an adjacent sleeping family's campsite, and attempt to steal their expensive Yeti cooler and a heavy-duty tarp to construct a makeshift shelter. He would inevitably trip over a guy line, trigger a massive physical altercation with a stranger, and get our entire party arrested by the park rangers before we even brew the Saturday morning coffee.
That is a structurally sound theory. He is a chaos agent. However, I submit a counter-argument that is far more lethal. The answer is Mel. Mel would not just ruin the trip, she would salt the earth. Imagine the inciting incident. She arrives at the campsite and realizes there is 0 cellular reception. Her ability to monitor her perceived social status is severed.
Oh, she'd panic.
Then, she is forced into close proximity with our mothers. Our mothers, who are masters of the covert insult, would take one look at Mel arriving in the woods wearing impractical white linen, wide-leg trousers, and they would deliver a devastatingly subtle critique of her aesthetic. Mel, whose ego is already fractured, would completely snap. She wouldn't just argue. She would deliberately hurl a lit kerosene lantern into a patch of dry brush just to assert dominance. She would literally trigger a forest fire to avoid feeling unseen by older women.
Oh my God. The visual of Mel engaging in psychological warfare with our mothers, it is Godzilla versus Kong, but with passive-aggressive comments about footwear. No one survives the fallout.
Okay, moving to segment 2. Most delusional character. Who is constructing the most elaborate alternate reality this week?
This is an exceptionally crowded field this week. We have 3 top-tier contenders operating at the peak of self-deception.
Contender 1, Barney. A man who looks at hard, empirical data proving that an arms dealer murders his associates and decides that his fragile, unearned sovereignty as a man acts as a Kevlar vest against bullets. Contender 2, Mel. A woman who genuinely believes that a forced, through-gritted-teeth apology and a fake smile can magically erase a documented history of property damage, physical assault, and vehicular dog slaughter. She treats her reputation like a fresh coat of paint over black mold, ignoring the fact that the structural rot is going to collapse the house.
Contender 3, Coop. A man sitting fully clothed in a dry bathtub, hallucinating conversations with a dead relative, convincing himself that he is a good guy executing the right thing, while simultaneously stealing a $300,000 asset from a friend whose house he invaded.
The gold medal for delusion, without question, goes to Barney. Allow me to differentiate them. Mel and Coop are undeniably delusional, but their actions are driven by acute panic and impulsive survival instincts. Barney is operating with premeditation. He reviewed a spreadsheet. He analyzed the mortality rate of Ash's partners. And he made a conscious, sober, calculated decision to prioritize his masculine pride over his biological pulse. That is not just delusion. That is weaponized, terminal stupidity.
I cannot argue with that logic. Barney is actively building his own coffin because he doesn't want his father-in-law to see him looking at an Excel document. It is evolutionary failure. Segment 3, outside error ratings.
The rubric is simple. We will evaluate specific activities from the episode and plot them on a spectrum ranging from fully outside, unhinged behavior to absolute, hermetically sealed homebody isolation.
Okay, scenario 1. Breaking and entering into a friend's house to steal vintage memorabilia while you assume they're attending a runway show.
That registers at the absolute maximum of the outside era spectrum. You have intentionally breached the perimeter of your own home, you have physically invaded a foreign environment, and you are engaging in high-stakes, adrenaline-fueled illicit activity. That is peak outside behavior.
Scenario 2. Walking up your own driveway, getting struck by a high-voltage taser, and being violently thrown into the cargo hold of an unmarked vehicle by masked assailants.
I classify this as the ultimate forced outside era. It is the tragic irony of the homebody. Coop was mere inches from his front door. His hand was likely reaching for the knob to secure himself inside his sanctuary, and the outside world aggressively, non-consensually intervened. 0 out of 10. A homebody's worst nightmare realized.
Final scenario. Retreating into a friend's secondary bathroom, refusing to utilize the window exit, and engaging in a deep philosophical debate with a figment of your own imagination to avoid conflict.
This is the holy grail of homebody behavior. Coop located the smallest, most defensible enclosed space within a hostile environment, engaged the lock, and retreated entirely into the landscape of his own mind to evade social interaction. I harbor immense respect for the tactic. If I am forced to attend a social gathering that exceeds the 2-hour mark, I'm essentially executing this exact maneuver in the host's powder room, minus the phantom father.
Which brings us perfectly to our final segment, and my personal favorite coping mechanism. Segment 4, camping luxury manifestations. We need to pivot back to our impending real-world doom. If we possess the ability to manifest any absurd, unhinged luxury item or service from the Your Friends and Neighbors universe to make our family camping trip endurable, what are you summoning?
I am directly appropriating Owen Ash's tactical deployment of the private sushi chef. But I do not just want the personnel. I demand the entire infrastructure. I want to be seated on a damp, moss-covered log, radiating the scent of industrial strunk dekeet, while a culinary professional in a pristine, starched white coat hands me a perfectly constructed, spicy tuna roll on a glazed ceramic plate. I want the stark juxtaposition of wilderness and extreme opulence. I intend to aggressively gentrify the forest.
That is a deeply toxic application of wealth, but I respect the vision. My manifestation requires heavy machinery. I am summoning an entire architecturally integrated panic room, like the ones billionaires install in their basements. I want it deceptively camouflaged. On the exterior, it looks like a standard, slightly weathered Coleman family tent. But the moment you unzip the nylon flap, you step into a vault. A soundproof, climate-controlled, hermetically sealed bunker with a deadbolt on the inside. So when the inevitable fire pit drama detonates and Allison begins weeping because she got a speck of ash in her eye, I can simply step through the portal, engage the titanium locks, recline in an ergonomic chair, and sip a chilled Paloma in total, absolute silence.
We are, on a fundamental level, deeply flawed individuals avoiding the reality of human connection. But at the very least, we possess the self-awareness to admit it.
We really do. Self-awareness is our saving grace. We survive the mess by analyzing it. And we want to profoundly thank the Snark Squad for hanging out and surviving yet another chaotic Thursday evening with us.
Your continued presence in this community is the only external validation that justifies our weekly spiraling.
We need you all to immediately hit the comment section and weigh in on the critical issues. Number 1, interrogate your soul and tell us, are you fundamentally a homebody or are you pushing into your outside era?
Be honest with yourselves.
Number 2, we need to feel better about our impending doom, so share your most chaotic, true crime documentary level personal camping disaster stories. Number 3, is our 5-day vegetarian streak inducing literal delusions, or is the lack of animal protein just altering our brain chemistry?
It's the protein.
And finally, number 4, drop the recipe for your absolute favorite summer cocktail so I can mentally project myself onto a beach instead of into a sleeping bag.
And please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement is the only metric that sustains our fragile egos, unlike Barney, who chose death over a desk job.
Exactly. We choose life, and we choose the Snark Squad. Until next week, babes, stay messy, stay moisturized, and we will see us on the Snark side.